Every startup begins alone. A small team, a fragile idea, limited resources. In the early days, independence feels like strength. Control feels like safety. Founders take pride in building everything themselves, believing that self-reliance is proof of conviction. But as startups grow, books on entrepreneurship reveal a quiet truth that only experience teaches. Scale is rarely achieved in isolation. The most enduring startups do not grow faster because they work harder. They grow further because they learn how to partner. Partnerships, in their ideal form, are force multipliers. They compress time, expand reach, and unlock capabilities that would take years to build internally. Yet most startups misunderstand alliances precisely because they approach them with the wrong mindset. They treat partnerships as shortcuts rather than systems, as transactions rather than relationships. The literature is clear. Partnerships that accelerate growth are not opportunistic. They are architectural. One of the first lessons that emerges from studying successful startup alliances is that partnerships are not about need, but about leverage. Startups that seek partners out of desperation often accept misaligned terms. They surrender control too early. They optimize for access instead of fit. Books consistently show that the strongest partnerships are formed when both sides already have momentum, when value flows in both directions. Growth partnerships succeed not because one side rescues the other, but because both sides amplify what already works. Another recurring insight is that partnerships are a reflection of strategy, not a substitute for it. Startups that lack clarity about who they serve and why they matter struggle to partner effectively. Without a clear value proposition, alliances become vague and fragile. The books emphasize that partnerships work best when each company knows exactly what it contributes and what it refuses to dilute. Boundaries create trust. Ambiguity destroys it. Books that analyze platform companies and ecosystem-driven startups reveal a powerful pattern. Partnerships often scale distribution before they scale product. Integration into existing workflows, channels, or audiences can unlock growth that marketing alone cannot achieve. But this only works when the product is already capable of delivering value. Partnerships do not fix weak products, they expose them. This is why seasoned founders delay alliances until core usage is strong. They know that amplification magnifies reality, not intention. Another subtle but critical theme appears around incentives. Most partnership failures are not caused by bad people, but by misaligned rewards. When one side benefits disproportionately, cooperation erodes. The book stressed the importance of designing partnerships where success metrics overlap naturally. Shared customers, shared revenue, shared outcomes. When incentives align, coordination feels effortless. When they don't, even small disagreements become structural conflicts. Trust emerges as the invisible currency of all successful alliances. Unlike customers or investors, partners operate in the gray space between internal and external. They see more, they know more. And this makes integrity non-negotiable. Books on long-term partnerships emphasize that trust is built slowly and lost instantly. Missed commitments, unclear communication, or opportunistic behavior may produce short-term gain, but they poison future collaboration. Startups that treat partners as disposable rarely build ecosystems that endure. Another lesson the literature returns to repeatedly is that partnerships demand operational maturity. It is one thing to sign an agreement. It is another to execute together. Shared roadmaps, clear ownership, defined escalation paths. Startups that rush into partnerships without internal discipline create friction, not just for themselves, but for their partners. The most successful alliances are boring in the best way, predictable, well-governed, and resilient under stress. As startups scale, partnerships often evolve, from optional to essential. Distribution partners unlock global reach. Technology partners accelerate innovation. Strategic alliances open, regulated, or capital-intensive markets. Books show that at this stage, partnerships are no longer experiments, they are infrastructure. They shape competitive advantage. They influence culture. And they determine how quickly a startup can respond to change. But with scale comes risk. Overdependence on a single partner can become a hidden vulnerability. The literature warns that startups must balance leverage with optionality. Diversifying partnerships, maintaining internal capabilities, and avoiding exclusivity that restricts future moves are all recurring themes. Smart founders treat partnerships as accelerants, not lifelines. Growth should be faster because of partnerships, not impossible without them. Another powerful insight emerges around identity. Startups that partner well understand who they are not trying to be. They resist the urge to compete with partners. They avoid overlapping value propositions. The books show that the strongest ecosystems are built when each participant remains distinct. Complementarity, not convergence, is what sustains collaboration over time. Perhaps the most misunderstood aspect of startup partnerships is timing. Too early, and alliances distract from product-market fit. Too late, and opportunities close. Books emphasize that the right moment for partnership is when a startup has something proven but constrained, something that works but cannot scale alone. At that moment, partnerships become transformational rather than distracting. As these lessons accumulate, a deeper understanding forms. Partnerships are not about growth alone. They are about learning. Exposure to how other organizations operate, decide, and scale expands a startup's strategic imagination. Many founders credit their most important inflection points not to funding rounds, but to partnerships that force them to think differently about their business. And this is where the story begins to sharpen. Because once a startup realizes that alliances are not merely tactical moves but long-term commitments that shape direction, culture, and reputation, the question changes. It is no longer who can help us grow, but who should we grow with? It is at this point where partnership becomes identity that alliances stop being deals and start becoming durable engines of expansion, capable of carrying a startup further than it could ever travel alone, provided those alliances are built with intention, discipline, and patience, unfolding gradually like a bridge built from both sides at once, each span meeting only when alignment is precise enough to support real weight. And this is where startup partnerships reveal their deepest truth, not as growth hacks, but as long-term commitments that test strategy, character, and patience. In the second half of the partnership journey, alliances stop being exciting announcements and start becoming daily reality. Calendars fill with joint meetings, roadmaps overlap, dependencies form. And this is where many partnerships quietly fail, not because the idea was wrong, but because the relationship was underdeveloped. Books that study enduring startup alliances are remarkably consistent on this point. Partnerships do not collapse from conflict. They collapse from neglect. The most successful startup partnerships evolve from agreements into operating systems. Roles are clarified. Ownership is explicit. Communication rhythms are established before problems arise. These partnerships do not rely on goodwill alone. They rely on structure. When tension appears, as it inevitably does, there are mechanisms to surface it early. This operational maturity is what allows alliances to survive growth, personnel changes, and market shifts without unraveling. Another insight that emerges clearly is that great partnerships demand continuous renegotiation, not of contracts, but of expectations. As startups grow, their priorities change. What once felt balanced can become asymmetric. The books emphasize that strong partners revisit alignment regularly. They ask difficult questions before resentment sets in. What are we getting now that we didn't before? What has become costly? What no longer fits? These conversations feel uncomfortable, but they prevent silent decay. Trust, at this stage, deepens or disappears. Startups that honor commitments even when inconvenient earn reputational capital that compounds across ecosystems. Those that exploit loopholes or shift blame gain short-term leverage but long-term isolation. The literature is clear. In startup ecosystems, memory is long. Partners talk. Patterns are noticed. How you treat one alliance shapes how future partners approach you. Another powerful lesson is that partnerships change how startups see competition. Instead of zero-sum thinking, alliances encourage positive-sum strategies. Co-marketing replaces conquest. Integration replaces replacement. Books that examine platform and marketplace startups show that partnerships often transform competitors into collaborators, expanding the total market instead of fragmenting it. This mindset shift unlocks growth paths that solo execution rarely reaches. As partnerships mature, they also influence internal culture. Teams learn to think beyond company boundaries. Empathy expands. Accountability sharpens. Startups that partner well tend to develop stronger internal processes because partners expose weaknesses that customers may tolerate, but collaborators cannot. In this sense, partnerships act as mirrors. They reflect not only your strengths, but your blind spots. Eventually, the strongest alliances become quiet advantages. They are no longer announced in press releases. They are embedded in workflows, products, and customer experiences. Users may never know where one company ends and another begins, and that is the point. The best partnerships feel seamless because they were designed to serve outcomes, not egos. And so the story reaches its quiet conclusion. Startup partnerships are not about growing faster at any cost. They are about growing together in ways that would be impossible alone. They require clarity, humility, and long-term thinking. When done well, they turn startups into ecosystems. When done poorly, they become distractions that drain focus and trust. If this reflection resonated with you, pause and ask yourself one question. If your startup doubled in size through partnerships next year, which internal weakness would be exposed first? That answer tells you what to strengthen now. Share that thought. And if you want to continue exploring how smart collaboration quietly outperforms solo brilliance in the startup world, stay connected. Subscribe, follow, and return. Because the most powerful growth does not come from standing alone, but from choosing the right allies and building something neither of you could create by yourselves.